Okay everyone, this is the 3D model, and I've put a person here, image of a person, just so we get some 3D context for what's going on in the model, and some size, scale. Okay, so we can rotate and move around this particular model, and I just want to zoom out and show you the scale of this, because it covers 70 years. So if I'm zooming out here, so hopefully we get an understanding here that this is a pretty significant size model that I'm going to walk us through. And it's going to take probably at least an hour for me to describe all of the features and so on as to why all of these lines and prophesied time scales and periods line up on one particular set of feasts, and for good significant reason. Now, if you've just watched the video of all that handwriting, I apologise about that, but this is such a big topic, such an important topic, and it's covered in so many places in the Bible. It's amazing. There's many references, and without understanding the appointed times and understanding the Maseroth and how Yahovah's calendar works, as I've just explained, it's almost impossible to discern what these verses are talking about. In particular, we can understand that because Daniel is told to shut up the book and seal it away because it's for a time way in the distance. And even though he was given understanding, the angel told him that it wasn't for his generation and time, and basically, even though he had a lot of knowledge, he wasn't going to be able to understand it. And that can be summarized due to the complexity of this and basically needing computing power. And we're told in Revelation that knowledge will increase in those days, and that people will roam to and fro throughout the earth, and they will be growing in knowledge but never in understanding. I guess our computing power and so on is allowing us to do things like this, to see it all in one place and understand it and put it all together and explain it to each other and assist each other in understanding. And so that's what I'm going to try and do here. I just want to reiterate the point that I made on the previous parts of this video, that this information has been grappled with by many, including famous people like Newton, Nostradamus. There's a huge number of people through time who have wished and desperately wanted to know this, and have tried to use all sorts of things to calculate why all these verses look the way they do, how they can be put together, and so on. But the main issue is that we've lost track of the year on Yahovah's calendar, and we still actually don't know what year we're in. The reason being is we lost track of one component, which was the agricultural count, and that happened around the time that the Sanhedrin was disbanded, and we took on what is basically the Roman calendar, the Gregorian calendar, which is really an abomination, seeks to change times and seasons. We've got things like Christmas and Easter and all sorts of horrific celebrations put in place instead of the ones we've been told to celebrate. So yeah, we've lost track of our calendar, and it's only been through computing power and looking at things like the Maseroth, which is represented by these big blood red moons here in the model, and this yellow ball that's blackened, a solar eclipse. Those things are part of the Maseroth, and they have helped us pinpoint where we think we are on the calendar in terms of the time spans, the 6,000 years plus 1,000. That is in the Bible, 6,000 years, and then the Lord Yahovah goes for a holiday for 1,000 years, and his son rules and reigns in his place. And so we can pinpoint a lot of those things using this model. But actually we don't know, and I'm going to tell you right now from the outset that this model is a tool of a watchman. It's not a prophet's tool. I didn't get a word directly from Yahovah himself. He didn't audibly speak to me. This information is already given to us, and it's in his word, and we have all of the tools we need to investigate this and make sure that we're on track and we're understanding his words. We've never had more information and a better chance of understanding this information than right now in these last days. And that actually makes, scripturally, that makes a lot of sense. So, without further ado, I'm going to take you all the way back to what was the Second World War, the end of the Second World War. And you need a little bit of understanding of history in this. You also need some biblical background knowledge. If you're a newbie to this, you're probably going to have to make sure you watch both of all of the video that I've just done, plus the previous video, and get into your Bible and look at these scriptures and write them all down and go and study them. But there definitely needs to be some background knowledge, because this is a very complex subject that well, this is like knowing, in a worldly way, this is basically like knowing the lotto numbers months before the lotto occurs. We have managed to work out something that allows us ourselves to see into the future, and it was given to us as a comfort because of the times that we're about to go into. So we should be feeling comfortable that our King is telling us what he's doing, because we're willing to research, look at this stuff, and analyze it, and do what we're told. We're to do to follow the covenant. Okay, so let's go back here. This is this little tank here that I've put in the model. It signifies World War II finishing. Okay, and this line, these dotted lines, they represent a moment in time, and or a particular day. Now, I should also explain in this model that these walls that you've seen, each one represents a verse, as in the list that I wrote down for you earlier. Each wall is specifically, has a very specific length. It's not just a random length. If I was to measure the length of this wall all the way back for you, you would find that every day is represented by 1 centimetre in the model, and that wall is exactly 70 years. So with all the other walls, they have a specific length. I can't change the length at all, because the length is related to the Bible verse. I cannot change the word. Other things that I can't change is that we are told when to observe tabernacles, Rosh Hashanah, we are told when to observe Passover, trumpets, and so on. Every one of the feast days has a very, very specific set of rules around how to observe it, and it's based on the moon, agricultural cycles, and so on. Now, every poor farmer can follow this particular calendar. Anyone who spends a lot of time outside in the outdoors, as we all used to, except for the last sort of 100 years, and particularly at this end when we have roofs, street lights, and television to keep us occupied at night, we're basically more in the dark now in regards to Yahovah's calendar than we were through the last 5,000-6,000 years. And that's on purpose, I believe. But we can keep track of these particular feasts, Passover and so on, by finding true biblical Rosh Hashanah, not the Sanhedrin's wicked version of it, which is in the middle of the year at trumpets. This is true biblical Rosh Hashanah, the true head of the year. You find that by watching the Aviv Barley and then citing the slither of the renewed moon, and then you count 14 days. 14 days on from a slither is a full moon, and you have Passover, and so on. And that's how we've explained how we get these perfect lines. The distance between these lines is very, very exact. We've made sure that it's to 0.3 decimal places, basically, at least 3 decimal places. So this model is very, very accurate. And so yeah, each one of these lines here represents a particular moment in time, or a day in time. So without further ado, we have World War II finishing, and then this line here, I've just placed it for our benefit. It's the Feast of Trumpets, 1947. That's this line, so that you understand where we're at. And then this line here is true biblical Rosh Hashanah. This line here. And then on the 14th of May 1948, which on the Sanhedrin's calendar is the 6th of the Iyar, we have to just take that point in time as true, because we have no other way, because we've lost count of what year we're in and what the day is and so on. But if we use the 6th of the Iyar on that calendar, this line here represents the day that the one to become the Prime Minister, Ben-Gurion, he declared independence in a speech, and you can research that online and find that. I don't use, for everyone's benefit, I don't use the UN's declaration of nationhood. One is because Jerusalem wasn't mentioned, and two, I don't think Yahovah would recognize the UN. He would recognize a man from one of the tribes, a central figure from one of the tribes, Ben-Gurion at the time, an important influential leadership position, and he did make a public statement. So that's a particularly interesting line. You notice that none of the walls start on that line, and what that did when he declared independence, a war broke out, and that's what this tank is here for. Okay, the war continued until through past Trumpets, 1948. And on the 30th of November 1948, see this line here, there was a ceasefire in Jerusalem. Now, the reason why this is really specific is the Bible does not refer to a piece of dirt that was declared to be Israel, or it was actually called the State of Israel. That is actually a piece of dirt. It is not a people group. Now, Israel in the Bible is always referred to as a group of people, the 12 tribes of Israel, and they have a holy city called Jerusalem. Now, Jerusalem is the place that is mentioned in terms of end times prophecy, not the piece of dirt that the UN has arbitrarily declared. So I'm certainly seeking for all historical matters that relate to Jerusalem and relate to things like border changes and so on. Now, this line over here, there was a ceasefire in Jerusalem. The borders at that time were scribed on a piece of paper on the floor, on a dirt floor, by the two generals who were fighting in Jerusalem. And those borders did not change, that they drew up. They did not change until the 6-day war, over nearly 19 years away. And it also said that there would be roads established and a wall was established. So this particular thing that happened here is very, very biblically significant. But the reason also why I've started this blue wall on Trumpets 1948 is that if we believe that the King is going to come on trumpets, that's the Feast of Trumpets is the coming of a king and so on. If we believe that Yeshua, our Messiah, is going to return on the Feast of Trumpets, as a king would, and has been declared, then a 70-year period should really start on trumpets 1948, and that's why this blue wall is here. So I write here the trumpets to trumpets. The assumption equals Yeshua returns on the Feast of Trumpets. I'm happy to discuss that and talk as to whether or not that's an accurate way of going about it. And the verse reads something like 70 weeks is determined upon thy people and thy holy city, or 70 years. So from trumpets 1948 to the end, there's 70 years, and so you can watch this blue wall progress. Okay, here we have biblical Rosh Hashanah, a blood red moon on Passover 1949. This is what we call that lunar tetrad event, where not only do we get 4 blood red moons in a row, but they also fall on these feasts. This is an incredibly rare event, astronomical event, very, very rare. So it's Passover, Tabernacles, Passover, Tabernacles, and what is the chance that you get blood red moons at these very significant times? That staggers belief, really. So here we have trumpets 1949, this line here, and the next line here is the Feast of Atonement in 1949, and the third line here is Tabernacles, the start of Tabernacles, and this sentence here pointing to this next line is in 5th of December 1949. Ben-Gurion actually declared Jerusalem as the capital, and it was to be restored. So the border lines had been drawn up back here on this line, but it wasn't until here that Ben-Gurion, the Prime Minister, declared that Jerusalem is to be restored as the capital, and the roads and so on, and the wall was to be established. And so what I've done is I think historically that's the most accurate speech that I could find online that represents the Bible verse, a commandment going forth to restore Jerusalem as the capital of the nation of Israel. And so both of these walls here, or these time periods, have been started on that particular date. 69 weeks and the 62 weeks. Daniel 9:25 and Daniel 9:26 are both started. If you go and read those two verses and the context, the verses before and after, you will see that restoring Jerusalem, okay, and the wall and so on, has the declaration or the statement has to go out on that date, and that's the date that these walls start. Now, if we scroll along, the 69 weeks says that from the commandment going forth to build and restore Jerusalem is 69 weeks, even in troublous times. In the brown wall, the 62 weeks is from Jerusalem is restored until Messiah is cut off. Now, they're not perfect renditions of those verses, so you'll have to go and read it for yourself, but I assure you that we've got this right. So from Jerusalem restored until Messiah is cut off, this is the brown wall, is 62 weeks, okay, or 62 years. And just while we're here, that one generation, 70 years, Daniel 9:2 and Daniel 9:24 and Jeremiah, it all talks about the 70 years, one generation. There is one generation remaining. Okay, if I scroll along, we come up to the 6-day war. Here we go. So the 6-day war started on the 5th of June, and we've got another little tank here to represent that. Do like that little tank. model's very accurate. I have to keep reiterating that, and I'll just show you that using the tape measure from this line to this line is 0.41 meters, or otherwise known as 41 days. Now, if we zoom out, the time between the 25th of April, which is the blood red moon, and the time between the 25th of April, which is the blood red moon, and the 6th of June is exactly 41 days, as I just mentioned. So you can get your calendar out and have a look at that. Not that I want to be using the Gregorian dates, April and June, and the 5th and the 25th, but a more important thing is that we're looking at the lines like Passover. Sorry about that. Just had to I clicked on the wrong tool, and I just had to adjust it again. But continuing, so the 6-day war, we can see immediately after the 6-day war we had this blood red moon set on the cycle, Passover, Tabernacles, Passover, Tabernacles, and over the back here you have to do some research on Leviticus 25:8-10 on how to begin a Jubilee cycle, and basically the high priest has to declare a Jubilee year has begun, or a Jubilee cycle is beginning, and he does that on Atonement, in the Feast of Atonement. So if we rotate over the wall and zoom in, you can see this middle line, the 3 lines. On these 3 lines we've started the wall on Atonement, on the Day of Atonement, as the priest would have declared that if he was instated and in place. So here we have trumpets as the first line, Feast of Atonement 1968, Tabernacles 1968, and this green wall that we're starting here is the Jubilee cycle, 50 years. So the 6-day war, basically, until Messiah. So it should be 50 years. Okay, we keep scrolling along, and we come to the end of the brown wall, which is 62 weeks. And we have some very significant events that are happening about that time. Firstly, the first thing we have is this particular blood red moon. So we had a rare central eclipse or blood red moon over Jerusalem on the 16th of June 2011. So we have true biblical Rosh Hashanah 2011. Now that normally falls around about March, and then in June we had this eclipse. Then on the Feast of Trumpets 2011, if you've watched the video from my previous video, you will know that this particular sign that occurs in the heavens is very important. It's a woman clothed with the sun. She has the moon at her feet. There's the moon. Mercury is right here on her arm. She is clothed with the sun. Mercury is the child, and she is a mother. So Venus is there, and Saturn, or Kronos, the one who devours his own children, is right there in front of the womb, waiting to devour the child. Now, prophetically, that's extremely significant, and you can see the slither of the new moon at the time that Feast of Trumpets is. This is the beginning of the month, and this was the Feast of Trumpets because we were watching the Aviv Barley at the time. So not only do we get a very important sign in the heavens, it's on the feast day, and it is biblically correct. A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, a moon is at her feet. She has a garland of 12 stars, Leo, and she is with child. And it talks about Satan being there ready to devour the child. Okay, so we've just been warned with the blood red moon that something's coming, and then on trumpets we get this great sign that appeared in heaven. So basically we're waiting for a war in heaven and for Satan to be cast down. And what is seeming to happen here is that Yeshua is being cut off. The Messiah is being cut off, but not for his own sake. Now, I'll show you how that plays out in a moment. But there's two time scales that are starting at that moment. The 1,290 days starts then, and the 1,335 days starts on that moment. Now you can see that wall is ending because Messiah has been cut off, and these verses 1,335 and the 1,209, the sacrifice is taken away until the abomination of desolation is set up. 1,290 days, I've written on the wall here, 1,290 days is specifically the span between trumpets and the last day of unleavened bread, given 1 month is added. And that's actually what we're seeing happen right now as I speak. We had a month added. We don't have Aviv Barley, and we've finished the 12th month, so we're inside a month being added. And that's exactly what happens, and it exactly makes up 1,290 days to the end of unleavened bread, from trumpets to unleavened bread. It says after that verse, 12:11, it says 12:12, blessed is he that waiteth. So that particular time span is extremely specific. It's 1,335 days is a unique span. Trumpets, the Feast of Trumpets to Shavuot or Pentecost. Sorry about my spelling, folks. It should be an E. If during unleavened bread the weekly Sabbath falls on the 17th day, and thus first fruits is on the 18th day, okay, then this will end on Shavuot. This bar will finish on Shavuot, and that's being extremely specific about what happens in this time, and we are going to find out in 2015 whether this actually does happen, whether the weekly Sabbath falls on the 17th day, that's Saturday, the weekly Sabbath, because you start counting 50 days from the weekly Sabbath in the middle of unleavened bread. That's how the rules go for Yahovah's calendar and when to have the feasts. And so first fruits will be on the 18th day, and you count from the 18th day of the month of Aviv. If you count forward and we rotate over that line through here, falls perfectly on the end of the wall. Perfectly on the end of the wall from that trumpets 2011. Now I'm going to explain what happens here because it's very complicated. This is basically when the abomination of desolation is set up. And I'll come back to that. So back here we are watching for something that might be referred to as Satan's arrival. Now this is where the Maseroth, this and this are so critical and so important to understand, and this information has been lost to the church, what you call the church or the ecclesia. It's been lost for thousands of years, and it's only been because of NASA models, Pentium chips and computing power that we have been able to see these things. And NASA is particularly useful in this regard. So we get some very interesting things happen at this time. Now, I want to read to you about this entity called the day star, the morning star. Now, we have plenty of scripture about this, but these verses are kind of strange riddles to the average Christian, and we've just put it down to the complexity and the unusualness of the Bible. But that is not so. It's because we have lost information and we have inherited lies from our Father. We have verses here like Isaiah 14:12 that says, "How you have fallen from heaven, morning star, O son of the dawn." I could actually go to you and read to you from Isaiah that passage, and I might actually do that, so we understand biblically where this information is coming from. It's in other places. There's this battle between who is the day star and the morning star in a number of places. But I'm just going to read to you some of Isaiah 14, and I'm going to start at 14 verse 4. That you will take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, how the oppressor has ceased, the golden city ceased. The Yahovah has broken the staff of the wicked, the scepter of the rulers. He who struck the people in wrath with a continual stroke. He who ruled the nations in anger is persecuted, and no one hinders. The whole earth is at rest and quiet. They break forth into singing. Indeed, the cypress trees rejoice over you, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since you were cut down, no woodsman has come up against us. Now here it gets exciting. Hell from beneath is excited about you to meet you at your coming. It stirs up the dead for you, all the chief ones of the earth. It is raised up from their thrones, all the kings of the nations, and all shall speak and say to you, have you also come as weak as we? Have you come like us? Your pomp is brought down to Sheol, and the sound of your stringed instruments. The maggot is spread under you, and worms cover you. How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. So that actually could be read, how are you fallen from heaven, O morning star, or O day star, son of the morning. How you are cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations. For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation, on the farthest sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet you shall be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest depths of the pit. I can keep going, but if you are grasping what's being read, is that passage is a prophecy about Satan being cast to earth, and we know that happens in the end time. And if we read here on this wall, I've written some things here. When Venus is following the sun, this actually comes off a pagan website, because the pagans know more about this than we do, because we've lost all this information and we don't read our Bibles properly. But this is what a pagan website had to say about this particular moment. When Venus is following the sun, she is known in Latin as Vesperus, the evening star. But when she precedes the sun, she is known as Luciferus, the morning star. The Latin word Lucifer, which is mentioned only once in the Bible, simply means bringer of the dawn. To the ancient Maya and the Aztecs, the god Xolotl was the evening star, and his brother Quetzalcoatl was the morning star. The Maya and the Aztecs prophecy that one day their god Quetzalcoatl will return to Earth from Venus. Okay, so we have actually got multiple cultures predicting the same thing, and it's going to happen at this time when Venus goes in front of the sun. You can also go and read Revelation 22:16. That's where some of that comes from, and cross references. There is a cycle of conjunctions between Venus and the Earth, which is almost exactly 2,000 years in duration. So, as Venus completed her current 8-year cycle of transits, these two planets finally advanced to a position where they traced out the exact same shape of a pentagram in the exact same location in the sky as the one they formed together 2,000 years ago during the time of Yeshua, the first arrival of Messiah. So this particular thing, the transit of Venus, the day star, the morning star, and a great war in heaven, should start sending chills up your spine, because this is biblically prophetically correct. So on the 6th of June 2012, we had the transit of Venus, and it is among one of the rarest of predictable celestial phenomena. And it happened 2,000 years ago, at the time of Yeshua's first time on earth. So I've got here the word Satan's arrival, and if you have a look what was happening in the Mazzaroth at the time, some very ominous signs. This is the adversary's constellation. The king has got his foot on the neck, and Venus, perhaps he's been born to Earth around this time. I also noted here that on this particular line here, this particular day, the sun, the moon, the earth, and Venus are all in perfect alignment, all eclipsing each other. Very, very rare celestial sight to behold. So in Acts 1:3, it says there are 3 days and 3 nights, and then there are a further 40 days, and Yeshua ascended. So if I rotate this, so you can see what we're looking at. Sorry. This particular amassing of the moon, Jupiter, Venus, and the sun also occurred right here. That's Yeshua's ascension date. You can historically go back into that video I did for his death day and the blood red moon, and then then 40 days after his resurrection, which is this time here, this day here. This is what happened: Sun, Moon, Jupiter, and Venus. And just be aware that around Acts and at the end of Matthew, Luke, and so on, it talks about seeing what's going on in heaven, and it repeats itself at the time of his return. Okay, the sign of him, he will return the same way he left. Okay, so they're just some interesting points to note about what happened on this time. So if I start the 2,300 days right on that transit of Venus, that Mazzaroth event right there, and we run it forward, we'll see where it ends later on in the model. So I'm speaking to you right from here in the middle of this little white box here. We've had Purim, and we're adding a month right now. At the end of this lunar month, we're going to get Rosh Hashanah. 14 days later, we have Passover and a giant blood red moon, and we start one of these rare blood red moon cycles again. They're warnings to his people Israel. So we've got a lot of strange and unusual things happening in the world. We've got 1 in 500 year droughts. We've got crops all dying, we have wars and rumours of wars happening, we've had lots of earthquakes during this time, some very, very significant ones, knocking out Fukushima and killing the oceans of the world, and it doesn't even take a pagan priestess to know that we're in troublous times. So even more, I think his servants should know that there are things to be watched for at the moment. There are things happening and we need to be on high alert, because what I'm going to show you is starting to get scary. So from Passover 2014 in a few days time to Passover in 2015. Just before Passover 2015, we have this rare central solar eclipse. I'm going to show you how that plays in a moment. We have Passover 2015, blood red moon, and then this line here is particularly important. It's where unleavened bread, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, ends. And if I scroll over the back here of these walls, that is where this 1290 day cycle finishes and the 1260 day cycle starts. Soon in a moment I'm going to tell you how that story plays for those of you who don't recall the Bible tale. This wall here, or actually no, I'll do it now. So the way the story goes is it says that there's 1290 days until the abomination of desolation is set up. And it also says that it's in the midst of the week the abomination is set up. You could read that as in the midst of the blood red moon cycle, the midst of the 7 years, or the 1 year covenant that we're going to see happen soon. So in the word it says that when the abomination is set up, that you need to flee and you need to pray that it's not winter or bad weather, because it's on some of the last days of winter. Just as spring is starting to happen and we're coming out of winter, you need to pray that it's not winter time and that it's not on the Sabbath, and that is one of the appointed times, not the weekly Sabbath, although you can pray for that as well. But the last day of unleavened bread, the holiday, that is the 7-day feast period that is unleavened bread, pray that it's not on the last day. Okay, and that's for good reason, because you just don't want to be defiling Sabbaths at this time. So we have that falling perfectly on the last day of unleavened bread. If we do our count, our Shavuot count, this day here, Passover plus 50 days, given that on the 17th day is the weekly Sabbath, this line here is perfectly the end of this 1335 day wall. Now I want you to go into your imaginations here for a moment, just to imagine the way the story plays out. Judah, who live in that land that we call Israel, the state of Israel, a huge army is invading and pushing upon the people, Judah, or the Jews, and this the sackcloth sun is starting that invasion. Here we go, because sackcloth, the sun being turned to sackcloth, is a warning to the Gentiles. So they are here, right next to this man, on that line, setting up an attack on the state of Israel. And that, I assume, happens for a little while until they get their hands on Jerusalem. And Satan is able to stand up the abomination that causeth desolation on the last day of unleavened bread. The house is then full of leaven, and people flee, and so you flee into the desert, and you have to wait until a gift is given to you on Shavuot or Pentecost. So you flee into the desert, into the wilderness. Let's just say you flee towards Sinai, go back to Mount Sinai, and you start to get grumbly, hungry tummies, and you have to wait a little time because a gift is given to you, and it says that a place is prepared where she will be looked after for 1,260 days. I think that's what it says. So here we have you fleeing on the last day of unleavened bread, fleeing into the desert. The woman flees into the wilderness for 1,260 days and is looked after for a time. And it also says that at the standing up of the abomination of desolation, power is given to the two witnesses for 1,260 days. That's said in Revelation 11:3. So this is stood up. The abomination that causeth desolation arrives. Israel, the people of Judah, the Levites, and the tribes of Judah that live in Israel at the moment, they flee into the wilderness if they are being obedient to Revelations and Yeshua. They will flee, and they will be looked after for a time. And immediately as that statue stood up, two witnesses turn up to speak on behalf of Yahovah, and they stand in Jerusalem, and no one can touch them for 1,260 days, and fire and power comes out of their mouths, and they smite anyone who comes against them. And so that's Revelations 11:3. Remember that this verse, the verse here in Daniel 8:14, the red line, resembling 2,300 days, the sacrifice is taken away. Yeshua is the sacrifice, right? So he's been cut off. The abomination of desolation is set up here. The sanctuary is trodden underfoot by the Gentiles, this back wall, 11:2. And the host is trodden on. Well, that's the people, that's us. And it says that because he can't get the woman, or Judah, he turns his attention to finding the rest of the people who keep to the name of Yeshua and his Father's will, or his will. Same thing. Okay, so this red wall continues in 2,300 days. This the city is trodden under by the Gentiles for 42 months, 1,240 days. The woman flees to the wilderness and so on. You watch how these all start to line up. So from sackcloth sun on the Maseroth to sackcloth sun, that is a perfect span of 1,240 days. Perfectly. We then have about a month, and we get the Feast of Trumpets, 2018. We get this warning, the blood red moon warning to Israel, that it's just about to happen, the tribes of Israel. And we've got a warning for the Gentiles. I would like to conjecture to you that you might see a great city fall right at the end of the 1,240 days, and there's a lot of lamenting and woe, woe, woe. Here's trumpets, this line here, and we have the 70 weeks, 70 years finishes right there. And we have Jubilee and the 69 weeks finishing on atonement unto Messiah. is on atonement, the high priest of the order of Melchizedek can be revealed. These two walls, they also finish right here on the Day of Atonement. So all of those walls are finishing right there on a Day of Atonement. So following the specific calendar set down by Yahovah, which includes moon sightings, the slither of the moon sightings, Bali, the spans using NASA models and so on, and generating a 3D model with the lines all representing the exact time spans to 3 decimal places. These walls and spans spoken of in the Bible, 2,300 300 days, 1,260, 1,240, 1,290, 1,335, 70 weeks, 62 weeks, 69 weeks, and a full Jubilee, somehow managed to all line up perfectly to follow the story right here on the ends. And the story goes that a king arrives with great trumpets and trumpeting. The king, Yeshua, arrives. Then he is in seclusion for 10 days, as normally happens, and he is revealed to the nations on the Feast of Atonement. Now, it is said that on trumpets on his return, so he's returning to earth, we are caught up with him in the air and come back and rule and reign with him for 1,000 years. So the rapture thing is just nonsense. Okay, rapture refers to being caught up in the air with him. And there is no pre-tribulation rapture, because we are supposed to go through this time span. So I'm sorry to anyone who thinks you're going to be raptured out of this. This is an absolute blessing this time to us, because it's going to wake us up from our drunken stupor, and if we're repentant enough, we might make it to Trumpets 2018. We might be able to do great exploits. We might realize how wrong we've gotten the Bible, and how the cheap grace model and the prosperity and blessings is actually just a curse that is given to us by the kings of this earth and the devouring wolves who are currently pasturing us. This sort of information has got to get out to his people, so that we realize we've got basically 1 year until the trouble starts. Got 1 year to nearly the beginning of Passover 2014, and the abomination of desolation is still stood up 1 year later, Passover, around the time of Passover 2018. Okay, and then we know what happens here. After atonement, we have 5 days of wrath. That's going to be the wrath of, well, it's basically going to be a great war for 5 days. It doesn't take Yeshua and Yahovah more than 5 days to clean up a mess. And it says that there will be blood up to his bridle on his horse. It's going to be a great massacre. Then Tabernacles is a wedding. So Tabernacles is when he comes and tabernacles with us. Tabernacles, this line here, is the wedding day. He's obviously got to get all the warring out of place, and he's got to have judged his bride and servants by then, and so he can enjoy his wedding day, which is Tabernacles. And then it says he will tabernacle with us for 1,000 years. And that's why in Zechariah it says that you must come up for the Feast of Tabernacles, otherwise during the 1,000-year reign, otherwise the rain won't fall on your nation. And so the law definitely has not been done away with, because we're still doing the feasts during the 1,000-year reign. And this span here represents 1,000 years actually, because at the end of 1,000 years we have the last great day, the great white throne judgment. And everyone who was sleeping in the ground, who didn't get caught up with Yeshua on his way down, they stay in the ground until the Great White Throne Judgment. Stay asleep. When you die, you go to sleep in the grave. The grave is hell. Hell is the grave. Death and hell will be thrown into the lake of fire at the end of the last great day, as it says. Okay, so I'll just rotate over the end of this 3D model, so you can see atonement. The two lines perfectly finish on atonement. The precision of this, like I said, 3 decimal places. Warning to the Gentiles, is that line there is the eclipse of the sun. Perhaps a great city falls into the ocean or is cast down, never to be seen again. The great city of the Gentiles. Wonder which one that is. Babylon. Is it Rome? Or is it the Vatican, I should say, or perhaps Wall Street? I'll leave that up for your conjecture. But a great city is thrown into the sea. On trumpets, we have the blue wall finishing, trumpets 1948 to trumpets 2018, 70 years. On the Feast of Atonement, so from the commandment that goes forth to restore Jerusalem until Messiah is revealed, 69 weeks. Look at that, finishes perfectly. And from the last Jubilee cycle, 50 years, finishes right here between Atonement and Tabernacles, plus or minus 48 hours. So what are the odds of 2,000-year-old plus 3,000-year-old prophecies, Daniel, telling us about some time spans that must have fit Yahovah's appointed times, and that all fitting together so perfectly like that, and fulfilling the story, even the story that we know that happens. The abomination is set up, and a woman fleeing into the desert, and the host trodden on, and the 2 witnesses prophesying in Jerusalem for 1,260 days, with these big blood red moons punctuating everything. Can you see here how these are punctuating things? Blood red moon warning to start with, blood red moon warning that the end is very, very nigh, and a blood red moon set, a tetrad set on the feast days right in the middle, with these 2 little eclipses signifying the start and the end of the holy city being trodden underfoot by the Gentiles. You couldn't get anything more perfect than that. I haven't seen anything that covers this online, using the appointed times, using scripture and prophecy, using the calendar that Yahovah set down. There's no one who's been able to prophesy or speak about an end time date with that kind of level of accuracy, to my knowledge. And I'd love to know of anyone who has. I'm totally open to questions, comments, people giving us more information from here. This is a work in progress. I'm just a watchman, not a prophet. I'm just telling you what I've been shown, and I'm blowing my trumpet, letting you know to get ready, heads up. Stop listening to those devouring wolves that have you sitting there in the pews, paying their salaries so they can feed you nonsense and lies and drivel. Start coming out of that thing called Babylon, we call the church, or the circus, the church, and start meeting together and honestly seeking in your own homes, because you're actually going to go into hiding soon. You need to get prepared, you need to get reading, you need to get researching, you need to understand what the meaning of life is. The meaning of life is to understand whether or not you love Yahovah and his son Yeshua. That's the meaning of life. Or whether or not you want to do it your own way, whether or not you want to follow prosperity doctrines and believe in a God of the imagination of pastors or even your own imagination. You know, there's a lot of stuff that we need to get sorted as a group of people. We need to be repentant. The first and the last thing that Yeshua preached was repentance. The very first message he taught and the very last thing he said to his disciples before he left was be repentant. We need to get repenting because we have inherited very great lies from our fathers. And we're 2,000 years on from Yeshua, and we're about to see him come again. Okay, I hope that helps. Love to hear from you. Put comments on the website. Let me know what you think. Let me know if this doesn't scripturally match, and it's not perfect enough for you in terms of where these things are. Once again, this isn't my information, I'm just bringing it to you. We should all glorify Yahovah for putting this down so beautifully and declaring the end from the beginning with these blood red moons and with scripture and prophets who died trying to bring this to us. Okay, and one last comment to my brothers in Judah, in the land of Israel. I don't know whether I'm an Israelite or not. I have shaken the family tree. No Israelis or Judah, no one from Judah, no one that I know of has fallen out, but I could be of one of the lost tribes. And I come from New Zealand. I'm way down the other end of the world, and as far away as possible from Israel that you can get. And yeah, this journey started over 3 years ago in a place called Taupo in the centre of New Zealand, and I just want to say to you, you need to get away from the Talmud and all the nonsense that's in there. You've been told by some of your greatest rabbis that his name is Yeshua. Rabbi Kaduri, for example, he said that his name was Yeshua, and I've proven to you in the first video that Yeshua came and fulfilled the first 4 spring feasts. I'm showing you right now how he's going to perfectly fulfill the 4 fall feasts, and we've got biblical prophecy from both the book of Daniel and from the book of Revelation, both Old and New Covenant books, and yeah, you can see that I just hope that you are seeing this, understanding it, and you're ready to flee at the time that abomination that causeth desolation is stood up. And my prayer is that you do, and that as a family group, Israel is reunited someday under our Messiah for 1,000 years. So yeah, get away from that Talmud, please, and get into the Word, the Bible, the whole lot, the whole thing, not just the first half. Okay, bless you all. Give me some comments. Thanks.